Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something right now. If a man disappeared on you, went silent, ghosted, vanished into thin air like David Copperfield, and then one day pops back up like, hey, stranger, you better not act like you ain't got no memory. His silence was loud. Don't ignore what it told you. When a man suddenly goes quiet, vanishes without explanation, or disappears just when everything seemed to be going well, that silence means something. It is not just a gap in conversation or an accidental break in communication. It is a loud message that many women ignore because they're too focused on how they feel rather than what his actions are screaming. Silence isn't neutral. It's not innocent. It's not something you should brush off like it was nothing. When someone who once called you every night suddenly stops, when someone who used to ask how your day was no longer seems to care, when someone who once made you feel like a priority now treats you like an option, you gotta pay attention to that. A man's silence tells you what his mouth won't. You ever hear someone say actions speak louder than words? Well, let me take it a step further. Inaction speaks louder than sweet talk. Because when he's gone quiet, he's not investing, he's not pursuing, he's not present. And any man who truly cares about a woman, who sees her worth, who wants a future with her, he's going to be present. Period. Ain't no man truly in love with you who's going to go radio silent without a word. Not if he respects you. Not if he values what y'all were building. Not if he sees you as someone important in his life. But here's what happens. Instead of listening to what his silence says, you start filling in the blanks. You tell yourself, maybe he's busy. Maybe he's going through something. Maybe he just needs space. Let me ask you this. Did he tell you that? Or are you telling yourself that because it hurts less than the truth? We do that sometimes. Create stories in our mind that justify someone's absence because the reality is just too painful to accept. But we can't keep doing that. That silence, it told you something real. It told you that in that moment, he made a choice. And that choice wasn't you. Silence is a decision. It's not passive. When a man chooses to go silent, he's choosing not to communicate. He's choosing not to reassure you. He's choosing not to explain, not to clarify, not to make sure you're okay. And ladies, if he can choose not to do those things when you need him most, when you're confused, hurt, or unsure, what makes you think he's going to be dependable in a relationship that requires consistency, commitment, and clarity? Don't ignore the emotional cost of that silence. Do you know how many women cry themselves to sleep over a man who couldn't even send a text? Who couldn't even give them a simple, hey, I need some time, or I'm going through something, I'll get back to you. That would have taken 30 seconds. But silence leaves you wondering. It plays on your insecurities. It makes you think you weren't enough, that maybe you did something wrong, that maybe if you had said one less thing or done one more thing, he would have stayed. But his silence was his choice, not your fault. That's the part you have to understand. You also got to stop making silence romantic. See, we live in a time where people try to turn dysfunction into passion. Folks will say things like, oh, we just have a complicated connection, or he always comes back so I know it's real. No, sis. That ain't love. That's a cycle. That's a pattern. Silence followed by sudden attention doesn't mean he loves you. It means he knows you'll still be there when he returns. Silence isn't mysterious. It's not deep. It's not masculine energy. It's neglect. And you can't build something real with a man who communicates by disappearing. Think about it. If y'all were married, if you had kids, if life got stressful, is that how he's going to handle things? By going quiet and leaving you to carry the emotional weight by yourself? You have to start treating dating like an interview for the rest of your life. If he can't show up now, why would you think he's going to show up later? Silence also reveals his priorities. If you text him and he doesn't respond for days, if you reach out and get nothing but echoes, that means he don't make you a priority. And I don't care how busy a man is, people make time for what they want. People reach out to who they care about. A man who's serious about you, who wants to keep your trust, who values your presence, will not leave you guessing. That's not how men move when they're serious. A man who wants you in his life will show you with consistency, not confuse you with silence. You can't afford to ignore the patterns. Every time you forgive the silence, every time you make excuses for it, you teach him that communication isn't necessary. You teach him that you'll tolerate emotional gaps, that you'll stay on standby waiting for him to decide when you matter again. And that's not love. That's emotional instability. That's waiting in limbo, hoping for closure from someone who didn't even respect you enough to say goodbye. Silence is the preview. Don't ignore it and then act shocked when it becomes the norm. If he can ghost you while dating, he can emotionally disappear in a relationship too. And that hurts even more when you've invested your heart, your energy, your time. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying you got to hate him or be bitter. I'm saying you got to learn from the silence. Don't beg for an explanation when his silence was the explanation. Don't go digging for closure when his actions already closed that door. Some men ain't confused, they're just not invested. And some men are lost, they're just not choosing you. And that's okay. You don't need to chase someone who went silent. You need to honor yourself enough to say, I heard you loud and clear, even when you said nothing. And don't confuse temporary silence with long-term growth. Just because he went quiet and came back doesn't mean he changed. Sometimes people don't return because they miss you. They return because they miss your energy, your attention, your loyalty. But that silence already told you how they handle pressure. That silence told you how they communicate. That silence told you where you rank on their priority list. When someone disappears on you and then reappears like nothing happened, it's not always about rekindling something special. Sometimes it's just a check-in to see if the door is still open. But if you heard the silence and still welcome them like nothing happened, you just taught them that inconsistency works. You taught them that you're available at their convenience. You taught them that your standards are negotiable. You got to train yourself to listen to silence like it's a conversation, because it was. His silence was him telling you everything you needed to know. Don't act deaf to that. When he returns, you hold the power, not him. A man who disappeared and suddenly comes back isn't doing you a favor. He's not gracing you with his presence. What he's doing is seeing if you're still available. He's testing the waters. He's seeing if the door he once walked out of is still cracked open. And right there, in that moment, when his name pops back up on your phone, when the text says, hey, how have you been? You're the one who gets to decide what happens next. You hold the cards. You hold the power. Not because you want revenge or because you're trying to play a game, but because when someone breaks the rhythm of communication, walks away, and then tries to re-enter your life like they never left, the authority to grant access again belongs to you. Most women forget that. They think when he comes back, the power dynamic flips back to how it used to be. They think because he reached out, that somehow means he's the one calling the shots again. But what they don't realize is this: his return is a request, not a right. Just because he's interested again doesn't mean you need to entertain him. Just because he's decided to show up now doesn't mean you owe him your time, your energy, your heart. You have every right to evaluate him with new eyes, not through the lens of who he used to be, but who he showed you he was when he left. See, when he returns, you can't forget the silence. You can't forget the confusion, the anxiety, the overthinking you had to work through on your own. You can't forget that while you were checking your phone, waiting for a message, wondering what you did wrong, he was somewhere else mentally, emotionally, maybe even physically, living his life without considering how his absence was affecting you. So now that he wants to step back in, you better remember how you had to pick yourself up without him. And this is the part that trips people up. You're allowed to outgrow someone's reappearance. You're allowed to become so secure, so healed, so full of self-worth that their return doesn't shake you. What used to break you now just reminds you of how far you've come. That's power. Power is not getting even. Power is not sending a long text full of receipts and emotions. Power is not explaining what they should already know. Real power is quiet. It's graceful. It's in your ability to decide without rage, without desperation, whether or not this person even deserves a second look. Because when a man disappears and then comes back, he's hoping you're still emotionally in the same place he left you. He's hoping you're still holding space for him, that maybe you haven't moved on, that maybe your love was strong enough to keep burning while he was off doing whatever he wanted. But if you've grown in his absence, if you've found peace, if you've gotten clear about your value, his re-entry doesn't tempt you, it tests you. Some men don't return because they realize they made a mistake. Some return because they thought you'd still be where they left you. They're not coming back with intention. They're coming back with curiosity. They want to see if the door is still unlocked. But baby, you control the lock now. You control the rules. You decide whether or not their return even warrants your attention. And if they really want to come back into your life, they need to understand it's not just about apologizing. It's about accountability. It's about effort. It's about showing you through action that they're not just passing through again. And listen, don't let loneliness confuse your discernment. Sometimes the idea of having someone back feels easier than starting over. But just because they're familiar doesn't mean they're right for you. Just because you miss them doesn't mean they're still a fit for the woman you've become. And if you forget that, you'll end up welcoming someone into your peace who once contributed to your pain. You got to ask yourself, is this man showing up to add to my life, or is he just here to see if he still has access to it? And holding the power means asking hard questions. Why did he leave? Did he ever explain himself, or did he just ghost and now expect you to forget that? Is he returning because he's truly changed, or because things didn't work out somewhere else? Did he learn anything in his time away? Is he willing to do the work this time, or does he just want the comfort of your presence without the responsibility of your heart? Holding the power also means you can forgive without reopening the door. You can respond with grace and still not re-engage. You can say, I appreciate you reaching out, and still choose not to go any further. Because your worth is not tied to how many chances you give someone. Your worth is in your ability to protect your peace even when the heart wants what the mind knows better than to accept. And don't let his sudden effort fool you. A few sweet messages don't cancel out a season of silence. A random I miss you doesn't undo months of ignoring you. You're not obligated to meet him at the same level of energy he left you on. If he comes back, he's the one who has to climb. He's the one who has to prove. He's the one who has to earn. You don't lower your standards because he showed back up. You raise them because now you know better. You also have to understand that your power isn't just in whether or not you take him back. It's in how you handle yourself during the entire interaction. Do you maintain your dignity? Do you keep your standards intact? Do you stay true to the version of yourself that grew during his absence? Because if you betray your own healing just to have him back, you didn't really grow. You just paused your progress. When he returns, he's stepping into a new chapter of your life. And you decide whether or not he even belongs in this chapter. You've evolved, you've healed, you've learned. And with that growth comes responsibility. You owe it to yourself not to accept anything less than consistency, clarity, and care. And if he can't offer those things, then his return is just noise, not restoration. Some men only return because they sense your glow up. They see that you've moved on, that you're smiling again, that you're doing fine without them. And their ego can't take that. They want to feel needed. But your power is in showing them that you've learned to love yourself more than you love the idea of them. That their absence taught you how to be whole. That their silence helped you find your voice. So when they return, it's not a fairy tale, it's a crossroad, and you get to choose whether you go back or move forward. Power isn't loud. It doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to post a status or throw a quote. Power is silent self-respect. Power is being able to say, I hear you, but I also hear me. Power is being able to say, yes, I miss you, but I miss me more when I was with you and losing myself. Power is being able to answer the message, not with desperation, but with discernment. You get to pause. You get to think. You get to ask yourself, does this serve the woman I'm becoming, or does this pull me back to the woman I was? The moment he comes back, you're not the same woman who waited by the phone. You're not the same woman who doubted her worth. You're not the same woman who cried herself to sleep over his silence. You are stronger now, smarter now, wiser now, and that means he doesn't get to just waltz back into your life like nothing happened. He doesn't get to skip the part where he earns back your trust. You are not a free ride. You are a prize. You are peace. And if he wants back in, he better understand that the woman standing in front of him is no longer waiting. She's choosing. And her choices now start with protecting her power. How you respond sets the tone for how he'll treat you moving forward. The moment he reaches out after silence, he's not just trying to talk to you, he's measuring how much of him you'll still accept. He's trying to see if the same door he walked out of is still unlocked. And this is the moment when your growth either becomes a lifestyle or just something you told yourself to feel better during the silence. When a man goes ghost or pulls back without explanation and then comes crawling back like nothing happened, he's checking to see if time weakened your boundaries or made you stronger. And whether you realize it or not, the way you respond to him is your final exam. Not his, yours. Now, a man doesn't always come back because he's ready to do better. Sometimes he comes back just to see if you've changed. Sometimes it's ego. Sometimes it's curiosity. Sometimes it's boredom. But no matter what his reason is, your job isn't to figure out his motives. It's to remain rooted in your value because he's watching. He may not say it, but he's watching your tone, your timing, your words, your energy, and all of that tells him exactly what version of you he's dealing with now. If he can just walk back in unannounced, without effort, without explanation, and still get access to your mind, your emotions, your softness, then he knows he can repeat that same disappearing act again, and the cost will still be the same. Nothing. See, a man will test your emotional maturity without ever saying it out loud, that, hey, you good, after weeks of silence. Isn't just casual, it's calculated, because he's looking for a reaction, not just a response. He wants to know, do you still need me? Do you still want me like before? Are you still emotionally accessible, even though I wasn't emotionally available? And this is where the woman you've become has to stand taller than the woman you used to be. The old version of you might have been flattered. She might have felt seen. She might have rushed to reply. But now you have clarity. Now you've seen what life is like when someone's absence forced you to show up for yourself. That message he sends might stir something in you. It might trigger excitement or confusion or even hope. And that's okay, you're human. But the goal is not to respond from your first emotion, it's to respond from your highest self. The version of you that cried but kept going. The version that felt abandoned but didn't beg. The version that rebuilt her confidence without needing someone to tell her she mattered. That's who needs to respond now. Not the part of you that's still wondering why he left, but the part of you that finally started asking why you waited. You have to ask yourself, what is the why behind this reach out? And more importantly, what is the why behind your urge to respond? Is it curiosity, closure, comfort? Be honest with yourself, because the most dangerous response isn't the one that sounds kind. It's the one that's emotionally dishonest. When you respond from a place of emotional hunger, you give away your power. But when you respond from a place of peace, even if you choose to engage, you're doing it from solid ground. You're not reacting, you're evaluating. Because make no mistake, your response teaches people how to treat you. Every time you lower your standard for the sake of connection, you're teaching him that access to you doesn't require respect, that love can exist without consistency, that he can disappear, come back, say a few sweet things, and you'll be right there, heart open, waiting like nothing happened. That's not love. That's self-betrayal disguised as loyalty. And let me tell you something else. A man who truly respects you won't reappear without explanation. He won't pretend like time didn't pass. He won't gaslight you with jokes like, long time no talk, or you still mad at me? A man with real intentions will acknowledge the space, take accountability for it, and clearly express why he's back and what he wants. Anything less than that is just noise. And how you respond to noise determines whether your life stays peaceful or turns chaotic again. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be harsh. You don't need to clap back or type a whole essay explaining your worth. Your growth will be visible in your tone, in your pacing, in the way you ask questions instead of making assumptions, in how you don't chase answers from people who once gave you confusion. That's the mark of emotional maturity, when you can respond slowly, calmly, and with clarity, regardless of how emotionally attached you once were. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Silence is a language too. Not every message deserves a reply. Not every man deserves closure. Some doors are meant to stay closed so you can protect the version of yourself you've worked hard to build. But if you do choose to respond, then do it like someone who knows their worth. Ask yourself, does this conversation serve the woman I am today? Does this re-engagement bring peace or disrupt it? Is this man capable of contributing to the life I'm building, or is he just another lesson I already learned? Remember, energy is expensive. And the more you grow, the more intentional you have to be with who you give it to. You can't be out here giving full access to people who only show up when it's convenient. You can't keep rewarding silence with presence. You can't keep inviting back the very energy you've prayed to be free from. Your boundaries are not just about protecting your heart. They're about preserving your progress. So when he reaches out, don't just think about what to say. Think about who you're saying it as. Are you showing up as your healed self, or are you still playing a role in a chapter that should have already ended? Are you responding out of habit, or are you choosing to speak from wholeness? Are you trying to prove you're still the same girl he left, or are you ready to show him he no longer has access to that version of you? Every message is an opportunity, not just to reconnect, but to redefine. Not just to talk, but to teach. Teach him what changed. Teach him how to approach you differently. Teach him that inconsistency has consequences. That silence isn't just time lost, it's trust broken. That disappearing comes with the risk of not being welcomed back. And while you're doing all that, don't forget to observe. Watch what he says, but more importantly, what he doesn't say. Does he bring up the silence or skip over it? Is he trying to rebuild or just rekindle? Does he ask how you been or only talk about himself? These things matter, because a man who wants to be different will communicate differently. Man who's done the inner work won't just come back out of nowhere. He'll come back with clarity, consistency, and a plan. Anything less is just a rerun. So when he reappears, remember, you're not just responding to a message. You're responding to a pattern that either ends with your growth or repeats with your silence. You've got the choice. You can train him to treat you with respect, or you can teach him that disappearing works. Either way, you're setting the tone, not with your words, but with your standards, your pacing, and your peace.